Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever noticed how we accept natural curves in almost every aspect of life? From our physical development to the trajectory of a relationship. They rise, they peak, they change. But when it comes to our careers, we seem to resist that idea fiercely. We cling to this notion of just constantly going up. It's something that, well, it can make us pretty uncomfortable. Today, we're diving deep into an article that really made us think, and honestly, it might make some of you feel a little touchy, as the author herself puts it. It's by Sylvia Ola, called Ageism, Unfair Bias or Harsh Reality and Necessary Action. So our mission here is to pull out the core ideas from Ola's piece, look at the academic research she brings in, and really explore this whole nuanced conversation, about career peaks, performance, and maybe the wisdom in knowing when to shift gears. We want to look at the what, and really importantly, the why it matters for you. And hey, before we jump into what might be a challenging but we think essential conversation, if you're finding these deep dives valuable, please take just a second now to subscribe and follow the show wherever you listen. It really does help us bring more talks like this right to you.
It's definitely a bold way for Ola to start, isn't it? She doesn't really pull any punches about how sensitive this topic can be. But I think it allows her to set the stage for an argument that's, well, pretty data-driven. And it pushes against a belief about careers that's, deeply ingrained in how we think.
Absolutely. Because the story we usually tell ourselves and that society tells us is about careers being this straight upward line, like just constant growth in knowledge, expertise, leadership, year after year. And let's be real, our corporate structures, pay scales, titles, prestige, they all kind of reinforce that idea. The older you get, the higher you're supposed to be, the more valuable in that sort of traditional climbing sense.
Right. But Ola draws this really interesting contrast. She says, look at almost everything else in life. Our own physical lives, we grow, we peak, we gradually decline. Or think about athletes. They train hard, hit peak performance, and then, inevitably, their physical output changes. Even creative fields often show this pattern, this arc. In all those areas, we pretty much accept the reality of a bell curve. There's a rise, a peak, and then a natural, sort of predictable shift downwards.
Okay, so here's where it gets, potentially uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Ola's core argument is that careers also follow this curve. Even though we really resist admitting it, we sort of desperately want to believe our work lives are different, that they just keep ascending forever, even when, as she argues, the data points somewhere else. It's like work is exempt from natural rhythms or something.
Mm-hmm. And this is where she starts bringing in the evidence. She doesn't just state it, she backs it up with specific data points, research findings. And what's quite striking is how consistent it seems to be across different fields. It's not just like one study saying one thing.
Okay, so what kind of data are we talking about? What does this peak actually look like in practice?
Well, she points to a few key areas. For instance, creativity and major scientific breakthroughs. They tend to cluster in people's late 30s to early 40s. Think Nobel Prize level work in physics or chemistry often happens around age 40, much less frequently after 50.
Oh, okay.
And then there's academic productivity and impact. Output might grow until 40, slow a bit in the 40s, stabilize after 50, but the impact of that research, the big ideas, that tends to decline more steadily with age.
Impact, not just output. That feels like a really key distinction.
It is, and even general cognitive performance, things like numeracy seem to peak around 40, literacy maybe closer to 45. And then there's earnings. Data suggests earnings tend to hit their maximum around 44 for women, maybe 55 for men, and then often plateau or even dip slightly.
So even the financial side reflects this curve.
Exactly. She also mentions studies like one from Ohio State in 2022. It found that while scientists might continue publishing papers later in their careers, their most creative, impactful, game-changing ideas tended to come earlier.
So output continues, but the groundbreaking stuff slows down.
Precisely. And there's also Dean Simonton's research on career arcs, which consistently shows productivity rising for about 20 years, and then, inevitably, a decline. It's presented as a very predictable pattern.
Ola also touches on this idea of a pay gap in reverse, right? Where companies might be paying senior employees more, but relative to their measured output in certain areas, it might be less than younger colleagues.
Yeah, she brings that up as another data point, suggesting a potential mismatch between traditional compensation structures and this performance curve reality. So if you pull all these threads together, Ola's conclusion is pretty direct. The professional peak, by most of these measures anyway, seems to fall somewhere between 40 and 55. After that, the slope generally bends downward. Now, she's careful to say it's not like falling off a cliff.
Right, not catastrophic.
No, not catastrophic, but predictable. And this leads to her really crucial point. This doesn't mean older professionals have zero value. Absolutely not. It means their value shifts.
And that's the bit that can feel really sensitive.
Exactly.
Which brings us right back to that touchy aspect.
No.
Ola herself anticipates this, starting her article with, "You all gonna hate me for this." And we get it. This can stir up strong feelings, especially for anyone who's faced ageism or felt dismissed because of their age. We need to acknowledge that emotional weight.
Definitely. But Ola tries to make a very specific distinction here. She argues that ageism is only unfair when it discounts skills and abilities someone genuinely still has. But, she suggests, maybe it's not inherently unfair if it simply reflects this predictable natural decline in certain performance metrics that the data shows.
That's a fine line, isn't it?
It is, and it's probably the most controversial part of her argument. She's not saying ageism doesn't exist or isn't harmful. She's asking us to consider if some of what gets labeled ageism might actually be rooted in acknowledging these documented performance shifts.
Right. And it circles back to that point you just made, which she emphasizes. This doesn't mean older professionals have no value. It does mean their value shifts.
That seems absolutely critical to understanding her argument properly. It's not about a total drop-off, but maybe a change in where your biggest strengths lie or where your most valuable contribution comes from.
Exactly. So if we sort of accept this idea of a natural curve, what do we do about it? Ola's suggestion isn't despair. Instead, she proposes embracing it, seeing this rhythm rise, peak, fall, not as some kind of tragedy you have to fight tooth and nail, but maybe as an opportunity to re-strategize, to redefine success for yourself.
And she brings in a psychological framework to help think about this transition, using Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. Specifically, she focuses on stage 7, which covers middle adulthood. And Erikson described the core challenge of this stage as generativity versus stagnation. Right. And generativity, well, Erikson saw it as the shift in focus, moving away from purely personal achievement or what's in it for me, towards contributing to the larger good, to the well-being of future generations. It's about using your accumulated wisdom, your experience, your skills to nurture what comes next, to make the world better in some way, rather than just, climbing higher yourself. It's a shift in purpose.
And the alternative, stagnation, sounds, well, pretty bleak, like feeling stuck, disconnected, unproductive, not really contributing anymore. Erikson saw it as feeling uninvolved, maybe withdrawn, kind of like being on the sidelines instead of in the game, in a way.
And Ola uses this generativity idea as a really powerful lens for careers after that peak performance phase. She makes this great analogy with retired athletes becoming coaches.
Ah, yeah, that makes sense.
They shift from being the star player on the field, the one with peak physical ability, to using their immense experience and strategic understanding to guide and develop the next generation of players.
Their role changes, but their value is still huge, maybe even more profound in some ways.
Exactly. The spotlight might be different, the pay structure might change, but the contribution to the team's future success is massive. It's a shift from doing at the front line to enabling from a different position.
So how did that translate to, say, the corporate world, or just our working lives generally?
Ola suggests that corporate career planning should maybe start acknowledging this shift more openly, that maybe the goal shouldn't always be climbing higher and higher on the same ladder. Perhaps at a certain point, the most valuable role transitions towards mentoring, coaching, guiding others on their ascent, making space, enabling their peak.
It's a different definition of leadership, almost.
It really is. And she shares her own perspective quite openly, which I found really interesting. She talks about her personal belief in planning for retirement around 50, not because she feels forced out, but because she sees it as making fair space for younger people.
And she even mentioned wanting to do something like be a Tesco cashier.
Yeah. For the social interaction, the rhythm of work. She frames it not as a defeat or a step down, but as a conscious, potentially fulfilling transition into a different kind of contribution, a different phase of life. It's about intentionality.
It really reframes the whole idea of winding down.
Absolutely. And it all builds towards this powerful concluding idea from Ola, making this kind of transition, embracing this shift. That isn't weakness, it's actually wisdom. She connects it to Erikson's final stage, integrity versus despair. The idea is that maybe the greatest legacy isn't just your own peak achievements, but knowing when your prime for that specific role has passed, and then actively helping others step into theirs.
Redefining success as enabling others' success. Professional generativity.
So, to kind of boil down Ola's main points for you, the listener. First, careers likely follow a bell curve, just like many other life domains, rise, peak, natural decline in certain aspects. Second, The data suggests this peak often occurs between 40 and 55. Third, the way forward isn't denial, but embracing this curve through generativity, shifting focus to mentoring, enabling, contributing in new ways.
Which leads us with a final thought to chew on. If we really accept this bell curve idea for careers, does our whole societal definition of success need a rethink? Is climbing higher always the only or even the best goal? Or could there be a deeper satisfaction, maybe a more meaningful legacy in knowing when to shift focus, step back slightly, and dedicate your wisdom to elevating others? Redefining your impact in the process, something to think about as you navigate your own path.